People in Europe will be scratching their heads and wondering what we're talking about.
Hello and welcome to another one of our Ask the Expert videos. We're Nigel and Jan, and we're answering your questions about boat electrics. So, what do we have today? In the US, if there are 120 volt outlets on the dock and 240 volt outlets, are the 120 volt outlets from one pedestal to the other one in phase or 180 degrees apart? And how can I tell?
This is an interesting question. People in Europe will be scratching their heads and wondering what we're talking about. In Europe, you have a hot and a neutral, and you've got 230 volts from the hot to the neutral.
Yeah, pretty simple.
In the US, we have 240 volt circuits, but what we actually have is two 120 volt circuits that are 180 degrees out of phase, which is to say the sine waves, one of them's going this way, and the other one's going this way. So when you've got the two opposed to each other, that's 120 volts positive, that's 120 negatives, that's 240 between the two of them.
We call that a split phase system right now.
That's technically probably incorrect, but it's commonly known as a split phase system. So on the dock, you've typically got 50 amp 240 volt outlets, and you're looking at those two hot legs, 120 degrees one way, 120 the other way. So then if you look at the 120 volt circuits, they're going from one of those hot legs to neutral. So we could check 120 on one pedestal and 120 on another pedestal. And then the question is, if we plugged into both of those, will we be getting 240 volts? And how would we tell? Well, so it's actually quite simple. If you plug into the hot terminals on the 220 volt circuits on different pedestals, if you get 0 volts, they're in phase. So they're both going the same part of the sine wave, and if you get 240 volts, they're out of phase.
Yeah.
So you can tell quite simply, but you wouldn't want to be just randomly kind of plugging into 220 volt circuits and then trying to rewire them to get 240 volts on the boat. We have in the States, we have special adapters and so on for switching between 240 and 120 and for checking if they're in phase or out of phase and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you want to check this with a multimeter, make sure you know what you're doing.
Yes.
Because, just don't stick the leads into any outlet just like that.
Right.
But in theory, you could do it.
Yeah. We do have adapters where you can plug into 220 volt circuits that are out of phase and get 240 volts to get onto a boat. But those adapters have built into them circuitry to see if they're in phase or out of phase. And they'll only make the connection if they're out of phase. And also, you can potentially backfeed one from another. And so there's safety circuitry built into them. So there are ways of doing this, but the way you should not be doing it is trying to rewire these things yourself. You need to get the special adapters with the built-in test circuitry and so on.
Kind of glad we don't have the stuff in Europe. It makes things much simpler.
It does, and also we have to put much more wiring on our boats to deal with the lower voltage circuits. But on the other hand, 120 volts is significantly safer than 230. I mean, you can get shocked with 120 volts and not get electrocuted, but with 230 volts, you're in serious trouble.
Yeah, I learned as a child, never plug a finger in in the outlet.
I put my parents' carving fork into an outlet. There was a big bang and it blew the prongs off the fork.
And that's how you learn that you want to work with electricity.
Yes, right.
But actually, if you want to learn how to properly wire AC systems, how to safely work with this, and also how to test and troubleshoot with a multimeter, check out our courses at BoatHowTo.com because we explain this in a lot of detail.
My dad wasn't very impressed with the fork, had much shorter prongs at the end of that.
Yeah, don't try that at home. Thanks for watching and see you soon.